Thanks for coming along, everyone. Today I am doing a tutorial on installing the Powerflex lower control arm bushings for my 2007 BMW Z4 Coupe. That's an E46 model. It'll also work on the 2003 to 2008 E85, E86, and some of the E46 cars. It basically works on any of the control arms that are shaped like a boomerang, where the two mounting points are on ball joints, and then the final end point is kind of like hanging from a bushing that is on the frame or chassis of the car. So the Powerflex bushing I'm using is this one here. It is the black bushing. I'm using the performance racing bushing as opposed to the street bushing because my car had an M suspension. I'm using the 66mm bushing. I'll show you a little bit about that when we get into the video. So the car was giving me some issues with it kind of shuddering and shaking, pulling to the right, pulling to the left when you brake, no reason at all. And when you were on certain roads that had a crown to them, the wheel would just kind of shake and shudder when you hit the brakes. So let me show you how I install these bushings. I found a really easy way to do them that may help people doing them because these are really not easy to do. And first, I'm going to show you some of the tools that I use. All right, so this is my bushing installation kit. It has a variety of different types of cups to work on bushings and sleeves. This works really good. I've used this on my friend's Porsche. I've used it on the back bearings on my BMW. Works fantastic. All right, next up is the tool from Bavarian Autosport. This is basically the setup you're using for pulling the bushings off the control arm. And it also has other pieces when you want to install it below. All right, it's pretty much a copy of BMW's tool. And there's a couple of other people like CTA that sell that tool. Links again are in the description below. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. There's a company called Race Ramps that makes ramps for cars. And they make these really long ramps so you won't bottom out the car or, bump into the ramp with your front bumper. It's good for very low cars. So I have a set of race ramps that I'll initially bring the car up on and then chock the wheels in the back. And then once that's up, I'll jack the car up. I use these jack pads. I'll put them underneath the floor jack it up, and then I have a jack stand with the round pad. I'll put the jack pad on the jack stand to support the car, and I did one side at a time. I wish I had access to a lift today, but I didn't. But again, I figured everybody else is not going to be probably having access to a lift anyway, so there's that. Also, rather than bore you with taking apart heat shields and all of that good stuff, the main heat shield has to come off the bottom of the car. It's an aluminum heat shield. It's held on with 8 bolts, 8 16mm headed bolts, but it's attached to the plastic pan that goes underneath the engine. And that's 3 8mm bolts, very tiny bolts that come off. You just take the bolts off the pan, take the heat shield off, slide it out like this from the pan, drop it down, and there you go. Some cars may have an auxiliary heat shield on the back of that one that kind of wraps around near the slave cylinder if you have a manual transmission, which I do. And I don't know if other cars have that, but mine does. That can stay with that shield, or you can remove that separately. That's 10mm bolts on that as far as the head goes. Anyway, once you get the heat shield off, it's maybe dirty, you may want to clean it up a bit, get it nice and clean, so when you put it back up into the car, it's going to look great. And those little things make a difference. So that's that. All right, so a few tips. One of the things you want to do while it's in the car is measure the diameter of the bushing itself. This is a 66mm bushing. There are some bushings that are 60mm, so you want to make sure that you order the right bushing before you take everything apart. You could have the wrong bushing. Now, I don't like bushings that are sold on the internet that are one-piece polyurethane bushings, where either the whole thing is one piece and it's not floating in the center, or the center is floating but it's not captured on one end, so the floating end can actually eventually push through and come out. So I chose to use the Powerflex bushing. Powerflex bushing is a two-piece bushing, fits inside like this and can rotate. Now what's nice about the design of the bushing, it has these serrations, I don't know if you could see them, in the bore. So when you grease the bushing with the special silicone grease they use for polyurethane bushings, the grease will stay in the serrations and lubricate the inner bushing. All right. Also notice that it's stepped so that when it's in place inside, it can't come out. It's captured. This goes against the control arm this way. This is towards the rear of the car, and it can't come out. It's a pretty slick design. So when you're installing these, just always remember that the tapered end of the bracket faces towards the rear of the car. So we're going to have to put this in like this. All right. So let's get through some of the tricks I've learned in changing these bushings and the best way to do them. So the first thing you want to do is grind everything flush to the actual sleeve and choose a side that has the least amount of movement. So this side is actually smaller, so we can want to press down this way than this side. We have less work to do. And obviously this side is corroded. We want to, if you want to press on this side, maybe clean everything up first. I'm going to clean this all up first on a wire wheel before I press it. I'm going to grind everything flush here so it's flush with the metal sleeve. All right, so let's take a look at what we got here. So I've ground it flush. I've cleaned this all up on a wire wheel. I'm going to use this actual piece I got from a Harbor Freight bearing installation tool. It fits on here really nice and is just the right size of this. I'm going to take it, I have a bushing pressing tool. I'm going to support this on the press with this and then press this thing through. Before I do that, I'm going to get some penetrating catalyst. I use this one from Blaster. Squirt it on here, just let it sit for a bit. And let me set up the press. So on the press, I've got the bracket supported by that sleeve from that bushing removal kit I have. Penetrating oil is doing its job on the sleeve. Got that piece from the Harbor Freight. It's like a tool again for basically putting in tapered bearings, cups and cones. It's from, I think it says US General on it. And just got it set up on my press. And let's give it a shot. Now what you want to do is you're pressing it down, make sure it doesn't catch the edge of the bracket at all and get caught up on it and damage it. I'm going to just make sure it's clear and release it a little bit. And make sure it's centered on it better. I don't want to damage this bracket. And that's another thing too, if you're uncertain about doing this, you may want to actually make sure you might have an extra one. Beautiful. Okay. Now sometimes these might leak oil, right? But this you could just see some of the oil is, the penetrating oil did its job. It got in there pretty good. Did everything it had to do. So that's that. There it is, all out. Right, so now we have our bracket with the bushing removed. And by the way, if you look at it, sometimes these people call these lollipop bushings. And what we're going to do now is clean this bracket up. And I'm going to actually pass a polishing tool through here to clean up any irregularities in the bore and make it look like new. All right, so I'm using a bore polishing tool. It's 180 grit. This is going to fit inside of the bore and just kind of clean up these little ridges over here. It's like a honing tool. You could use probably a honing stone for cylinders just to clean up any of the irregularities. So when the new bushing goes in, it's going to go in nice and smooth. I got a nice crosshatch pattern going there. Looks nice and cleaned up a bit. Pretty, ain't it? Okay, so here's the deal. Powerflex says, put some soapy water on here and push this through. It's not going to go through. There's no way you're going to be able to get this in, and there's no way you're going to be able to do it on a press and get it in, because when you try to press something without something holding it in the center, it's going to want to cock and move over and fly apart. I've done a lot of bushings in my day, and so I've found out that you always really need to have something kind of holding the bushing in the center so you can kind of drive it down. It may be able to cock a little bit, but you don't want the bushing to basically cock and fall out. Also, what I like to do when I do these types of bushings is I just like to go over here and take out any of the flash that is in the molding rubber flash, because this can hang up the bushing a little bit. So I'll go in there and just kind of just clean this up as much as I can a little bit with a razor knife. Get this out of the way and just make sure it's smooth. Sometimes these little things like this can hang a bushing up from going in. And I'm not going to use soap. I'm going to just use some good grease to grease this so it goes in place, and I'll show you my setup for that. So I have this universal bushing tool that I picked up on Amazon. They're like $57, and they have a bunch of good steel cups. So I've got this set up like this. This disc is going to go on. This is going to locate to the disc. I've ground a little notch in it over here to clear this little notch over here like this. It's going to fit like this. Then what I'm going to do is grease the inside of this, grease the inside of this bushing, and press it through with this disc. Tapered side is down. Going to go in the car like this. Going to use this here like this just to get this whole thing started inside. Going to go like that. We got to put this piece on like this and start cranking it down. And once it goes through, it'll be fine. See the way it just kind of pops out of the back end? All right, so there you have your completely modified BMW bracket now, ready to go. So Powerflex gives you this Teflon silicone bushing assembly grease, and it's very sticky stuff. It's great grease, and you put this in the inside bore of the bushing. Coat the hell out of it with this grease, because this is what's going to lubricate this bushing all the time. These greases are very important to use because, number one, they're extremely sticky, and also they do not wash out with water. So we want to just kind of press it into all those little serrations I said that was there. And maybe you should be using gloves because that's the correct thing to do, but I hate wearing gloves. What can I say? So anyway, this goes in here like this. Got a lot of grease. Gonna grease this as well. Grease the flange part also. So that when it pushes through, it lubricates the flange. And this can rotate now as you put it in the car. But that's our new setup. That's what it looks all done. So the mounting bolts that are on the bracket, there's 2 on each side, 16mm head. These get torqued down to 45 foot-pounds. And what I do is I like to clean them up with some brake cleaner. You should clean all your hardware on anything that you do. Clean it up really good. And I noticed that when cleaning the threads, they had a sealant on them, and it looked to me like almost like a Teflon sealant. So what I'm going to do is I have this thread sealant from Dynatex, and what I'm going to do is just put a little bit on there, just a little bit, put it in so that it seals the threads, because these are kind of exposed to water. And I think the logic is they don't want the water climbing up the threads and rotting everything in the undercarriage. So I'm going to mount it back up the way it came out and take it for a ride. So there you have it. It's all done. Car ride's fantastic. All that shimmying and pulling when you brake is all gone. Car feels really good. I'm actually happy with the results. What can I say? I don't see any noticeable difference in the road noise of the car, and I really can't say that the car really rides any firmer than it did, or that it's more responsive. I mean, I just put it in and been driving it. But what I can say is that it solved the issues for me. Maybe because the car has a motorsport suspension option, that it's already firm, so maybe that's why I don't really feel a difference to it. I have no association, by the way, with Powerflex, other than that I feel that they make great products. They're designed and manufactured in the United Kingdom. Great bunch of people. Easy to answer support questions. They get back to your emails right away, and I think that's very important. So hopefully you got something out of this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Leave comments below. Always read the video description again, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.